Hey, check it. Hey, check it. Put the place up.
All right. Welcome back, Jax FFL Shit Sippers. This is our second podcast for the league. We are T-minus 7 days. Although, by the time you hear this, it might be the day before the draft. But we are T-minus 7 days until the draft. I hope to see everyone there. And before we have the draft, I know that many of you, the first time you've ever played Superflex was last year. Or some of you may have never played Superflex, and this is your first time in the league. So I wanted to take a minute to talk about Superflex strategy in our league specifically. So when I designed the format for the league, like the number of starters and like what I thought would be the most fun, the goal was to balance all of the positions. Like, how could I do this? Because I was frankly tired of traditional leagues and certain positions just not mattering, specifically the quarterback position. In a traditional league of just one quarterback and only two receivers starting, you can take Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith, Jared Goff, Derek Carr in the 10th, 12th, or even frankly with your last pick. I remember one year that Ryan used to run a league. I drafted Josh Allen his rookie year and Jameis Winston with my last two picks and won the league because Josh Allen was okay his rookie year, but that was the year Winston threw 5,000 yards. And it didn't matter that someone else had Mahomes or whoever else early in the draft because you only started one quarterback, and I was able to find someone in the last round that was just as good or close enough that I had an advantage at every other position. So with this league, I tried to balance that out by having a balance of positions that if you just take whoever you want, whoever the best player is, recognizing that top quarterbacks matter, but just take the best player and take, someone you want to cheer for. If you take them and you hit on them every round, you're going to win. And in traditional, especially standard formats, that's just not true. But in this format it is. So let's talk about it. The format we have, before I get into the quarterback position, I added a third receiver to start. That third receiver really does push up the value of some receivers. In a traditional league, someone, like Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson might go early. But once you have those guys, you don't worry about your second receiver because you might be able to get someone like Mike Evans or Deontay Johnson like super late and then be totally capable second starters for you. Well, in our league, those are flexed bench type players or starters in our flex positions. So that pushes the value of those mid-tier receivers up. So I've done that because there are so many receivers in the league, because most teams now start 3 wide receiver sets, not traditional fullback I form pounded up the middle. So that really pushes up the value to balance that out. And it also brings down the value of running backs. Running backs traditionally get hurt more often than other positions. And now versus 15 to 20 years ago, they're just all in split backfields. So there's just not many bell cows in the real NFL. Running backs just aren't as valuable as they used to be. And that translates into the fantasy world. So there's just very few, you can count on one hand, maybe two, how many running backs really matter. Call it 10. If that, in the NFL, and the rest are split backfields. So why do I want to take someone who doesn't even really matter in real life in my fantasy league? That's not fun. Somebody who gets 10 to 12 carries a game, I don't want to watch that person over a receiver who's getting 7, 8, 10 catches a game. Like, that person matters more in real life. It's more fun to watch. So that's why we went with 3 receivers. So it helps pull up those receivers and pull down some of those mid-tier running backs, because there are many mid-tier running backs that aren't going to make it. You hope to get lucky, but many of them don't make it, and you'll have to pull them off the waiver wire. I don't want to take those guys early in my draft. Nobody does. So this helps balance the wide receiver versus running back positions. Now, moving on to quarterback. So Superflex. Superflex is awesome. We will never change from this format. It is amazing. The reason that is because, one, top quarterbacks matter, and they should, because they do in real life. So in this league, you don't have to take quarterbacks, but I would tell you it matters a lot. Top quarterbacks average about 25 points a game, where there might be one running back who does that. There's almost no receivers, maybe 1 or 2 if they have career years, but no one averages that. A bad quarterback, like just a number 15, middle of the road quarterback, averages about 20 points per season. Last season was down, for anybody comes and yells at me with stats, but generally, a middle of the road quarterback averages 20 points per game. I mean, that's there's starters at the running back position that don't average 20. There's starters in terms of receivers, like your second receivers, that, heck, even some of your bottom rung first receivers don't average 20 points a game. So in this format, you really want quarterbacks because they just average more points. So they're more valuable, which is, of course, similar to the NFL. So I would say, looking at last year, one of the not concerns, that's not the right word, but one of the things that I noticed that was odd was the first pick of a quarterback in our draft was the 6th spot. I was shocked because I was at the bottom of the first round, and I'm watching this and I'm like, wow, this is nuts, because I'm looking at the Superflex ADP on Fantasy Pros, and in the first round, there are currently 8 quarterbacks going. We had 3. I don't think we had 8 in the first 2 rounds last year. So I would say that most of us need to value quarterbacks higher, recognizing that somebody like a Mac Jones, who isn't a great quarterback, sorry, Steve, or Ryan Tannehill, sorry, TJ, or Brock Purdy, sorry, San Francisco fans, they're not great, but they're still starting quarterbacks, and they're still going to average 18, 20 points a game. Well, you know who's not going to average that? I don't know, Jamal Williams, Damian Harris, these bottom rung running backs that are getting drafted fairly high. I don't know, Pacheco, who's higher. Heck, they'll probably average more points than Aaron Jones or Kenneth Walker or Etienne or, dare I say it, Jamar Gibbs or Deebo Samuel. So if you can grab a Brock Purdy who's going to average 18, 20 plus points a game, well, Etienne ain't going to average that. Etienne's going a lot earlier, right? So if I could grab that guy, well, yeah, I'm going to grab that guy over, like I said, a Damian Harris, because I know going into the season, I can easily trade him for Damian Harris. In fact, I could probably trade him for a Dalvin Cook or a Miles Sanders or a Chris Godwin or a Brandon Ayuk. So the value of quarterbacks is higher because there's just not that many of them, which you should be used to with your running backs. Comparing to a normal league, those top running backs are very, very valuable, or even just solid running backs, because there aren't many of them. So in a league where we start 2 quarterbacks, every single starting quarterback will be taken. And not only will every quarterback be taken, but backups. So the Kyle Trasks of the world, if you draft Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask is worth drafting. If you're at the end of your draft and you don't really feel great about any players on the board, and I don't know, Mike White is sitting there, well, Tua might get hurt. Like, if you're sitting there and you're like, I got Anthony Richardson, and you know what? He might not actually make it. Gardner Minshew may start. Well, Gardner Minshew's worth drafting. So in our league, just simple math, we've got 12 teams, two starters apiece, right? That's 24. Well, add a backup to each team. Well, that's 36. There's only 32 teams in the league. So there are 4 teams that will come out of the draft without a backup at quarterback, which means some of those backups will get taken, which means when you draft, those quarterbacks should be worth more. Now, every league's different. Maybe you guys totally disagree with me. I'm just telling you what the math says. If you don't want to draft quarterbacks, that's totally cool. I played in a league last year. I shared it with you guys. Somebody went 0 quarterbacks. Like, they didn't draft a single quarterback until like the 10th or 11th round. It was absolutely ridiculous for a Superflex. But they won the league, which was silly. Which brings me to my next point. If anybody wants to take a guess, how many quarterbacks finished in the top 12 last year? Meaning they had 1 week as a top 12 quarterback. Think about it. I mean, there's only 32 teams in the league, so it can't be more than 32, right? Wrong. It was 47. So, week to week, there are quarterbacks you can pick up. If you just say, I want a positional advantage at everywhere else, and I'm just going to try to string quarterbacks. I mean, you can. I mean, it's your world. It's just really hard to do in a Superflex. So, and by the way, just to touch on the last podcast, I talked about quarterback hoarding because someone had mentioned it. It's not quarterback hoarding in a quarterback league if you can't even get 3 quarterbacks on every team. If somebody is drafting 4, and that 4th is, like I said, Mike White, Gardner Minshew, that's not quarterback hoarding. That's just strategy. I would rather take Gardner Minshew or Mike White versus, I don't know, Deuce Vaughn or Darius Slayton, Marvin Jones. I mean, these are the players going at the end of drafts. So having that 4th quarterback, you just hope that person hits and becomes a lottery ticket. The same way in a traditional draft that you would take the Deuce Vaughns of the world and hope Tony Pollard gets hurt and he becomes a guy. Like, that's what you're doing with some of these backup quarterbacks. So that's certainly not quarterback hoarding in a Superflex. That is very normal strategy. If you don't think so, it's because you're not used to playing Superflex. Like, that happens all the time in Superflex leagues. So when you go into the draft this weekend, just recognize, do what you want, have some fun. It really doesn't matter to me what you do, but have a good time. I want you to just recognize that quarterbacks are definitely more valuable than we had them placed at last year. Now, that doesn't mean you got to go quarterback. Right, Ryan? Ryan took, if I remember, Kyler Murray and someone else who were two top quarterbacks back-to-back, first and second round. They both busted, and it really ruined his year. Now, he could have taken Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts last year. If he would have done that, and he would have hit on his picks, like I said in the beginning, if you hit on your picks, you will win the league. Just hit on your picks. So if he would have done that and had Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, he would have dominated the league. So any strategy can work. You just got to hit on your picks. So make sure you nail your picks and have some people you want to cheer for, have a good time. But if we walk out of the draft again this year with like 3 quarterbacks going the first round, it's just not, again, every draft's different, but just know that would not be normal. Again, average draft on Fantasy Pros right now has 8 quarterbacks going the first round. Now it drops off quickly. There's only 4 quarterbacks going in this between the second and third rounds, so it's really just the top quarterbacks going early. But to have 2 or 3 is not normal at all. But you guys do you. What am I to say? I'm the sacko. So I look forward to seeing you guys this upcoming Saturday. If anybody's got any questions or wants to talk some Superflex general strategy, let me know. But otherwise, I look forward to dominating you. Peace out.